when I first was fundraising for my entrepreneurial journey here, I was fundraising, taking time, whatever, but I also had another job. And then when I quit that job, 3 weeks later, I got my first term sheet. So it was like just that commitment changed everything. And I didn't know that that was the case. I thought I could kind of do it all, but that changed everything.
Welcome, everyone, to another edition of F5 Collective Presents Women in Business. We are so excited today because we have the wonderful Lisa Dyson with us, co-founder, CEO of Air Protein. We're going to learn more about that. But Lisa, I thank you so much for coming today. Really, it was such a pleasure. We had such a lovely conversation, and I just love that we get to continue it, to share more about you and your journey. And I love that I get to speak to a native Los Angelino. So
Yes.
That's good.
Well, I'm excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, for sure. Now, so I want to know a little bit about you. So I was one of those kids that did really poorly in science in school. And I'm just curious regarding all of the work that you're doing now. Were you always interested in science, or was that just like a part of you, or how did this all come about?
Yeah, I always was interested in math.
Oh, okay.
And also became interested in science because I saw math come alive in science.
Oh,
and
wow.
I have to say that for me, I loved it so much that I would study it on my own. I'd learn it on my own. And sometimes it can be kind of boring in those classes. So maybe it wasn't you. It was just the classes. That's all. It didn't keep you entertained.
That's true. Well, it's funny because once I started in certain types of sciences, then they were really fascinating, and and it's so interesting. I love that, seeing math come alive. That's
Yes.
I
When
bake
you
a
can
lot.
see it in real life, like
Yeah.
in real examples, then it just becomes a whole different thing.
Yeah. Well, and I was going to say I bake a lot, so I get to see chemistry, right, come alive in that. And
Yes, exactly.
oh my goodness. So you were. How did MIT come about? How did this whole process kind of then lead you to really pursue it hardcore to that point?
Let's see. Well, one of my cousins is a rocket engineer, and so she was definitely a role model for me growing up. And I knew that I wanted to go into some science when I went into college. I didn't know which one, or engineering, and
Mm-hmm.
so that's why I did major in math initially. But it was plasma physics in particular, where that's the energy, from the sun essentially, and just
Oh my
seeing
God.
how you can look at these equations and they come alive with the plasma, was really something that was very interesting to me and caused me to start focusing on physics. So that was a transition to physics specifically, but since math is the foundation of all the sciences, that was where I started, knowing that I can go into any science or engineering from that point forward.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. And what I love is how you speak about it, is it just really does bring it to life in a visual way, and makes you sense it a little differently. It's like you're telling the story of science and the story of it, which is really beautiful. We'll get to that in a minute. I love that. But how did food become a focus of your scientific journey? Because it is, you don't necessarily equate the two always, but I'm really curious about that.
Yeah, that was a bit of a windy road to get there. And the way that I got there was myself and a colleague, Dr. John Reid. We've just been on this journey to make things in a way that is good for people and good for the planet, essentially. That's a journey we've been on for a while. And we discovered really a way to make food. Actually, it's based on work done by NASA. So during the space program, the Apollo space program in the 1960s and 70s,
Hmm.
NASA scientists asked the question, how could we feed astronauts on a long space journey to a distant planet or beyond? And you have to think differently. You don't have acres and acres of farmland. You have
Right.
to figure out how to make food much faster using minimal space and minimal resources, and just the resources that you have at your fingertips. And so one of the ideas they came up with was to use cultures like a yogurt culture, kind of
Hmm.
like a micro seed, a microorganism, and it's kind of like a micro seed, and grow that quickly in on a spaceship. And so we read the papers, we saw what they had been working on, and the mission they were working on. The Apollo space program ended before they completed the mission, and so we picked up where they left off essentially and started working on how to make food in a way that uses minimal resources and can be done quickly. And so the impact is that you can have a very minimal footprint. As our populations continue to grow, well
Right.
over 8 billion people now, as we get 9 billion people and beyond, where's all the land going to come from?
Right.
The acres and acres of land that we need to feed everyone. And so that was one of the motivations for focusing on this.
Well, it's so interesting because you've taken the what prompted you with this, and you've taken this whole concern about climate change and looking at that, and then addressing it through food disparity. And I think that's really fascinating because your brain doesn't necessarily correlate the two, right? So as you and John, and I'm also curious how you and John decided to work together. How did you end up partnering?
Oh, that's a curious journey. Well, we were good friends in grad school, both at MIT. We were good friends. We had the same schedules. We'd work really late at night, and kind of see each other in the dorm rooms, kind of during our crazy work schedules. But ultimately, we both were interested in starting a company around the environment, and we just entered a business plan competition together. That's how we started, and then the rest is history.
Oh my gosh. Now, is the business plan competition what led to, is it Sequesco?
It is actually.
Okay.
That was kind of the early years, kind of the first efforts. People liked it. They thought we had some great ideas, and they ended up, we won some money. So we're like, okay, let's keep going here.
Now, what exactly was Sequesco? Because then that led to Kiverdi, right? Which then led to Air Protein.
Yeah, we've been on this journey of like climate technologies, essentially. So how can you make things that are lower in footprint? And so that was the first iteration of that. Using CO2 to make fuel,
Right.
was the first iteration, and then we just kind of built from there.
So moving from, because you're both from academia and you've also done management consulting, moving from that into the world of entrepreneurship, that's got to be a little different. So what was that transition like for you?
It is so different. But my dad was an entrepreneur. So
Oh,
as
okay.
a child, yes, I saw all the highs and lows of building things and getting people on board to build those things. At some point, he was the president of a chain of 55 hair salons called Soul Scissors.
Oh,
And so
wow.
he was really a role model for me growing up as someone who was, very creative, had so many ideas, and was able to mobilize people to get things done.
Now, are you one, do you have any siblings?
I do. And actually a lot of people in my family are entrepreneurs. They followed my dad really because he showed them how to take, kind of in his case, he was in the hair industry, cosmetology, the beauty industry.
Right.
And so several of my family members had their own hair salons and kind of different levels of entrepreneurship.
Oh my gosh, that's so wonderful. It is something, isn't it, to have somebody who models that for you, and so you see what's possible. And I love that, and that's why doing this and chatting with you, because all those people out there who are thinking, I'm a scientist too. How can I get and take that, or I have an interest in something that's very unique or highly technical. And to that point, because you do speak so beautifully to the hard science, as they call it, and so forth, how do you balance that? How have you found that you are able to tell the story? And so making your highly technical terms, which I'm sure there are tons for all the work that you do, accessible for your audience.
In every way, I surround myself with people that are experts at doing things that I want to learn how to do. And so I think even if you go back to the first business plan competitions, just there are a lot of advisors that we were able to add to our team. Some of them became investors. Later, people became employees and all kinds of things. But it's more being around those that know how to tell the stories, know how to translate the science. And I would also say the Boston Consulting Group definitely helped with that.
Yeah,
So being
yeah.
at BCG, I'll tell a little story. My first project at BCG, it was after I got my PhD in high energy theoretical physics, and then they put me on a project to basically to work with VPs of this global company that was expanding internationally and how to market and all the different strategy components.
Wow.
And I was like, don't you want to give me a spreadsheet? What's going on here? But what I learned was that you could take the scientific method and apply it to any kind of problem, a business problem, what have you.
Mm,
But as I worked at BCG, as I worked through the many projects that we worked on, it's really fast paced and it's a way to get broad exposure and to really help executives across industries solve their business problems. That helped me just kind of see the unifying themes. It helped me to
hmm.
be able to up level the conversation, the communication. So I think that was a key part of my development as a business leader, to be able to see the business aspects of things and tell
Right.
the story that matters for the investors, the story that matters for customers, et cetera.
Wow, that's great because you're right. My dad used to have this thing that he would say is that, make sure that you surround your people. You won't know everything. So, if you want to succeed, and you need to make sure that you surround yourself with people that can support that, which means they have the
That's
strengths
right.
that you do not, and you bring the
Nice.
strengths that you do, right? So
Mhm.
I love that. That's really helpful, and it helps us continue to grow,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
I am honored by the networks I'm honored to be a part of, by the people that are my advisors, officially or unofficially, my mentors, my sponsors, and all the above.
Now, as far with the NASA, now it's we. There's another entrepreneur that we work with from time to time, and she also dealt with the NASA technology transfer program. What is that process like? And do you continue to work with them? I'm curious about that kind of process, especially what you were going through and with the air protein.
Well, going back to the origin of the technology, they had some original ideas, but if remember that they didn't finish the mission,
Right, right, yeah.
unfortunately. So we had to develop the technology. So we built on their original ideas, but we had to innovate and create a way of making food from air, water, and energy. So that is our technology that we developed. We did develop that in collaboration with some great minds at Lawrence Berkeley National Labs, at
Wow.
SRI, which is Stanford Research Institute, used to stand for
Mm,
that. So we've worked with great minds on this along the way, but and the great minds in our business as well. So
right.
it is our technology that we've ended up developing.
Oh my gosh. Now you've been. How long has air protein itself been in existence? This iteration
Um,
of your partnership with John.
yes, Air Protein has we raised capital in 20 December 2020,
Okay.
and we incorporated before that. So we've been around for a few years.
Now I saw that you have the air protein farm. I love that. Where is the air protein farm?
It's in San Leandro, California.
Okay.
So yep, just yep, San Leandro, East Bay in the Bay Area.
So what things are happening there? This is always curious, and it's so funny because if you'd let us, I'd love to be able to hang out with you at this. I've got to think about farms, so there you go. At some
The
point,
farm of tomorrow.
the farm
Yeah.
of tomorrow. But what are
Yeah.
some of the things that are happening there that are you're really excited about, and how does it work at the farm?
Yeah. So in order to make a technology like this work, you need biologists, microbiologists, you need people that understand food science, people that understand fermentation and beyond. There's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of different skill sets that come together. And so what we've done over the years is we've developed a scaled facility that is able, it essentially is, it is a type of fermentation, an elemental fermentation, as you were. We use elements
Oh
as our
wow,
inputs.
yeah,
So it would look like a brewery, basically. It looked like a brewery or making cheese or making yogurt, but it's slightly different, and that difference makes all the difference.
right,
And so, in addition to that, there's once you have the process complete, it creates a flour that is rich in protein, and that flour then you want to go and mix it with other ingredients and see what you can make out of it. Can you make
right,
pasta? Can you make bars, cereals, ice cream? And so we've had over the years food scientists that has demonstrated the flexibility of our protein ingredients, and we've made more than one. And just how do you make that into something that's delicious and that has the functional features that both consumers as well as companies are looking for.
Right. I love that you said delicious because anything that
Yes,
you
that's important.
right? Okay, so that's always that thing, which is I do a lot of cooking, and so I work with people sometimes dealing with their food stuff, and if they need to change how they eat or whatever, and the one thing I always ask them is say, is it important to you that it tastes good? Doesn't because if it doesn't taste good, you're not going to keep up with it. You're not going to use it. You're not going to maintain it. So find ways to make it taste good. And I love that you said delicious.
And we're in a moment
really
in our world too where everybody, all food companies essentially are trying to figure out how to get protein into their products in a way that tastes good. So whether it's protein on popcorn, whether it's protein in your foam, for your lattes, whether it's protein in your pancakes. So, and what most of those companies need is an ingredient that's pretty neutral.
Right.
And being neutral allows that flexibility where they can add the different spices and seasonings and sugar or whatever they're adding. Right. And so we've focused on being able to make a neutral ingredient that could give them the features that they're looking for, nutritional as well as functional features they're looking for.
Yeah, it seems like a really excellent canvas for, you know, which as a cook is just like your dream. You know? Yeah. Oh
absolutely.
My gosh. I love that. Now, are you a big foodie? Are you into cooking and all that kind of stuff?
I always say that my husband loves to cook, and then he always corrects me and says, no, I love to eat. And if he wants to eat, he's going to have to cook. So he is the foodie of the family.
Okay.
And he's Turkish. And so but he loves cuisines from all over the world. And so we have amazing cuisines from all over the world. And he's great. And occasionally I'll get in there and cook, and then he'll say, oh no, Lisa, you do it this way. And then I slowly back away. And then he takes over.
There you go. All right. It's also a tactic sometimes, right? Here, honey, are you sure? Okay. You go do it. That's right. Lovely. Oh my God. Exactly. Now I'm reading this because I want to make sure I get the name of the program correct. You just received an award for the Bezos Earth Fund Acceleration Initiative, which is super exciting. So what exactly does that entail? And what was that process like for consideration? And how does that now impact what you get to do moving forward?
Yeah, we're very honored to be a part of the Bezos Earth Fund portfolio. We're very honored, and I guess the first group of companies that they selected. So they reached out to us, and they selected us. They determined that we were one of the companies that they were interested in. They interviewed us. They asked a bunch of questions. We had to go through a process, but they had already, kind of knew the work, our body of work, what we were working on, and the impact that we can have. And that's really what they're focused on companies that can have a broad, big impact. Mm-hmm. And then once we went through the formal interview process, they let us know that we were one of the first awardees of their program. So we're excited to be a part of the Bezos Earth Fund portfolio.
Oh man, that's so great.
Yeah.
What do you, so they came to you, that's very, very cool. And I'm also curious because the work that you're doing is, it's so exciting, Lisa. It really is. And it's world changing. And I really look forward to where this goes and continuing to follow you in this. And I'm just wondering, is it a challenge while you're working in this very unique field, to scale a business that's in this kind of, how do you do that? How do you look at, okay, we're going to scale this business that is wholly unique in a very scientific, very technically focused way that deals with a very fundamental problem, which is food and climate, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. So how do you go about that?
Very carefully. Yeah. But so to scale any business, except if you're an AI right now, maybe it's a little bit, all the hype is there, but it's hard, especially a deep tech business. It definitely is hard and requires a lot of great minds to help you do it. But just being creative, being rigorous about the science, rigorous about the technology, step by step, figuring out one problem after the next to solve, mm-hmm. And then pivoting to the customer. So that was an important pivot for us last year. We were never not focused on the customer, but last year we started focusing on scaling, and the conversations changed. The conversations became about large volumes. How do we deliver deliver millions of kilograms to these different customers, 5 million kilograms to these different customers. And then it becomes about customer satisfaction. How do you make sure, one customer wants to impart juiciness while they're increasing the nutrient content of their food. Right. Another customer, so you need to make sure the ingredient provides that. It basically can hold water really well in that case. And then another customer wants to have an ingredient that foams really well so that it can replace egg white protein. And so that's, we need to make sure we deliver the specs for that company where our air protein flour is able to make or to provide the foaming characteristics. So that was a nice shift to start focusing on the different customer needs and making sure we can meet those needs. And then now it's just all about scaling and meeting demand. It's hard, and in every phase there's different things that take your energy and your focus. Mm-hmm. But what's important is just to have, solid people around you, kind of the solid team that is going to help you with each of those phases.
Right.
Investors that are going to be there along with you on the way, board, advisors, beyond. It's just the network of people that you surround yourself with that can get the introductions, move the conversations, and make something that hasn't happened before happen.
Right. Right. I love that you keep bringing it back to that support, basically. That it's not something that you can do all by yourself.
Absolutely.
And
yeah.
especially something that's this intense, right? And this, and it kind of brings up what has maybe been one of those things that has made you say, I'm going to celebrate this. This was an extraordinary achievement. And I know that you've received the award, and I know that there's been a lot of that, but is there something that was just so kind of fundamental that made you say, I'm so glad I'm doing this?
It took me a while to celebrate.
Okay.
I would have to say that there's so many wonderful things that have happened, wins from the external perspective, where I'm immediately back the next day to what's the next thing? What's the next box we have to check? What's the next challenge? This is not going to last forever. Like, we got to make sure. So I think what happened at some point was I learned how to pause. I learned how to pause and celebrate the little wins as well as the big wins. And so what caused me to do that was when I first turned from this massive challenge of trying to convince people that something is real that sounds like it's not real, and trying to, make this thing what it can be, right, to looking at individuals and the heart and their missions, everything that they're pouring into what we're doing. That was probably a turning point for me. I had an advisor. I was at an event with the Unreasonable group, and an advisor there, someone very successful entrepreneur, sold his business, and he said to me, Lisa, it looks like you're trying to carry the weight of your team on your shoulders. And he challenged me to be inspired by my team. And that was really when I looked and I saw just how much greatness I was surrounded by, and began to kind of change my perspective and start celebrating all the things, because it's a journey. It's a journey, step by step. And we all are here for different reasons, but we all have passions and missions that bring us here together. And to just enjoy those moments together is something that I started focusing on doing after that challenge by one of my great mentors along the way.
That's excellent. Yeah, those, we so often are tasked with ourselves that I think you're right. Too often we don't celebrate. We are focused on not letting things fall, or not letting this, or making sure we fix. And that's a disservice to us too, right? That's, that means we aren't giving us our whole self all the time. And
that's right. And you can multiply people's efforts by just showing them appreciation, by just being a part of celebrating the work along the way. And then they love it even more and keep going.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's so great. And as you have, so now you talk about your team, about how many are in your team right now?
We're actually at a pivot point where we've transitioned to being outsourcing. So we have a strategy of getting to scale faster
Mm-hmm.
by leveraging third-party manufacturers. So our team is broader than the people that are at the air farm, and now
Right.
it includes contract manufacturers that are global.
Oh, that's great. That's cool. That gives you so much perspective also, on a global level, like what's going on out there. Wow. Now, what was it I had seen somewhere that, because this is always interesting to me, because I have a real thing about climate change and wanting to battle it in the environment and so forth. What was it that sparked you regarding climate and feeling like you wanted to make sure that you were part of that fixing it or battling it?
Yeah, I would say so. It definitely in when I went to New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina hit, and was one of the many people working to help rebuild the city,
Mm-hmm.
the city there. That's when just I wanted to be a part of doing good things for the world. Like after that, just
Yeah.
how connected and interconnected we are was became very real and apparent, and how we need to or not need, but I want to be a part of helping others and helping, for the future,
Yeah.
creating a world where, um, it's better when I leave it than when I got here,
Yeah.
if possible.
Yeah.
So that experience is an experience that changed me in a number of ways, including wanting to have an impact in my work. And if we look at just how the weather events have increased. They've increased in severity, they've increased in intensity, in frequency, and how we have droughts, we have all kind of things happening, fires, storms, everything. Uh, how do we come together and do something positive in the
Yeah.
midst of all that? And so that's really a journey that I've been on.
Wow. Yeah. Katrina was quite something, wasn't
It was definitely something. And this speaks also to resilience. How
it?
can
Mm-hmm.
you create something that was resilient? In our one of the products that we have with the military at the moment through DARPA is around making a system that can make food anywhere, anytime, in a matter of hours from when you turn it on, and can just continuously produce food. And so one of the scenarios where that would play out is a disaster relief scenario.
Right.
So disaster relief, humanitarian aid, those are scenarios where if you had a unit that you can just take to a geography that's cut off from the traditional supply chain, you
Right.
can then just make nutrients that could then feed and sustain that local population. So it all kind of comes a little bit full circle when you think
Right.
about
Yeah.
what we're working to be able to commercialize. In addition to scaling up for the large manufacturers of the world that make the foods that end up on our grocery shelves, there's also the privilege to be able to make something that can be deployed throughout the world wherever it's needed.
I was going to ask you about the different, things that are on the horizon that you're working on that have you very excited that you're looking at, and also some of the things that might be going on in the fight against climate change that you see that might be very exciting, that may even have impact on what you are doing and how you're working with others.
Yeah, what I would say is that as we are scaling protein production, what is exciting is that people are more and more seeing the need for protein in their diets, myself included. Like over time, I've become more and more educated about protein. As someone who has been primarily a vegetarian for a large portion of my life, I'm a pseudotarian now, is what I call myself. My husband makes it and I eat it. So, but how do you get those protein sources? And he loves any meat you put in front of him, but he doesn't want to eat meat all day. So we
Right.
need other ways of getting our protein. We want to put it in our yogurt. We want to put it in our coffee. We want to put it, in the different things that we're making. And so I think it's exciting that is growing in interest here in the U.S. and not even just in the U.S. As I travel the world, in many parts of the world, that is growing, and it's good for you. It's healthy
Right.
for various reasons, and so that's kind of exciting that market pull is there. So the technology, the new way of farming, shall we say,
Yeah.
is something that has a positive impact on the land, on water, on climate. It has a positive environmental impact, but separate from all that, there's just this nutrition focus that's pulling it through. So I think that's what's exciting to see those two come together.
Yeah.
Is one thing. Yeah, is what
Yeah.
I highlight. Hmm.
Yeah, that's the thing that had me just, I mean, as I was getting ready to hang with you and chat with you, that was something that was really so cool, was the fact that this doesn't just have, I don't mean it in a trite way. It's not just about environmental impact, but it's the health and wellness. It's about that whole circle of life, which it's so interesting to say that, because I know that you have an incredible belief and focus on the circular economy, and that all comes together, right? No waste, and how can it, which makes more sense, because then if it's no waste, how can it positively impact all these different touch points? And that's so glorious, because then
Absolutely.
then that is global, that is world changing, that's humanity, right?
Yeah, thank you for saying all that. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
what drives the team members is really around the ability to do something positive for the environment, and the impact is people get great smoothie, people
Yeah,
get a great
man.
latte, all that good stuff. But going back to what I'm excited about, I'll just mention this, is that I'm excited about some gut health products that we're working on as well. So you mentioned this is linking the sustainable production of things to nutrition, health, and wellness. That is something that I'm excited about. We haven't announced anything, but
Okay.
but that's beyond just the protein. There's gut health that we're focused on.
You've just made my day. I am like, oh my gosh. So it's just, we won't get too into it, but gut health is, I love you. Okay. So
Okay, yay.
I already liked you a lot. So there we go. Oh my gosh. What advice for those folks, because it is such a lovely, one of the things I like about what we're doing with the program is showing folks that you may be coming from this sensibility and decide, I now want to go into having my own business, or really taking my passion and actually creating my own whatever. What advice would you give to somebody who was, let's say, going from academia to say, I've got this idea, I want to go out into entrepreneurship and create a business, or leaving something where, they've got a boss and it's kind of stable, but now I'm going to go and take this incredible risk? What kind of advice would you want to give?
Well, it would depend on the individual.
Right.
Every person's different. Every life story, every background is different. And in my case, I had a father that was on the entrepreneur journey my whole life. So I saw the highs, I saw the lows, I saw everything. So I wasn't surprised when the highs and the lows came when I was, being an entrepreneur.
Right.
So if someone has that as their background, then hey, I say just do it. That's what I say to them.
Mm-hmm.
But for someone who doesn't have that as their background, I just, let them know what they're in for, and that it is definitely a marathon and it's not a sprint. Many entrepreneurs come out sprinting, myself included, and we sprint maybe for too long, and some people get burnt out, and then that's enough.
Yeah.
And they walk away, or others, figure out how to slow down and pause and continue to run the marathon. So it would just really very much depend on where people are coming from, but it's not generically an easy task to build a business. There are definitely times and markets where it's easier, shall we say, maybe there's a lot of momentum. And then when you do it, focus on, you probably, for some entrepreneurs are going to raise capital, some aren't. But if you raise the capital, focus on customers. What am I delivering? What's the value proposition? Like very quickly, everything is focused on being able to deliver that value proposition. And don't be afraid to pivot if you need to,
Right.
as well. Because that's a part of entrepreneurship, is figuring out that product market fit. And it may not fit the first time or second or third. It may take 4 iterations before the fit is there. But evolution is a part of the journey as well.
Right. Got it. That's great. And I like that you talk about the fact that, it depends on the person, because we're not just one size fits all. Right.
Yeah.
And just
yeah.
like the business we choose to do may have different variables to it than others. Right. That's really, really true. I love that. Do you mentor yourself? I know that you're involved with Unread, but are you a mentor? Because you're.
Oh yeah. Unreasonable. You mentioned.
Yeah.
I am honored to be a part of that network in general. And yes, I'm a mentor in that network.
What do you, so what is, because I love this so much. I think that mentoring and having a mentor is very important. What do you find as a mentor? What do you feel is the incredible value of mentorship? I know that's a very broad question, but what are some of your favorite takeaways in the world of mentoring and being mentored yourself?
I think being able to provide perspective is a big one. And when you're in the midst of it, whether you see a way out or not, but you just need someone to help you to see the bigger picture and see optionality options that maybe you're not seeing initially. So I think it is really just being a someone who's been there, done that, who can take whatever the mentee is going through and rise it up to a higher level. Talk to them about the broader implications, talk to them about the broader opportunities, et cetera. That's a part of it. But sometimes it's being able to make introductions. Sometimes it's being able to advise on a specific strategy. Sometimes it's being able to advise on just business building, HR, hiring teams, recruiting. It can take different shapes, but it's essentially making yourself available to the mentee and willing to listen and hear what's going on with them and help them come up with the solutions, or open up your network in some way to help them get in contact with someone who can help them with the solution.
That's great. Yeah. Mentoring is such a, you need that sounding board. You need that person out there so that you don't feel alone.
Yes. And I've been so lucky to have so many mentors and to be a part of so many different networks.
Yeah, that's excellent.
Where there's just such great people in those networks. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. Is there anything else you would want to share? Anything special? Any last words of wisdom that you would want to put out there? This isn't BizFit Minute yet, so just so you know.
Okay, not yet.
Not yet.
Okay. Let me see. Any last words? I guess for entrepreneurs, what I would say is, if there's something you're passionate about, you know your why, I say go for it and do it and put your whole self in it and find the enjoyment on a daily basis in it. And yeah, that's I guess what I would say. Of course, people take different paths over time. So you also have to listen if for some reason you want to do something different and hand the baton to someone else. But if you're thinking about jumping in with both feet, I'd say jump in with both feet. I'll give you one little comment, is that when I first was fundraising for my entrepreneurial journey here, I was fundraising, taking time, whatever, but I also had another job. And then when I quit that job, 3 weeks later, I got my first term sheet. So it was like just that commitment changed everything. And I didn't know that was the case. I thought I could kind of do it all, but that changed everything.
Oh, that's excellent. Yeah. Well, if you're going to go for it, you got to go for it.
Yes.
Oh, I love it. That's excellent. Okay. So what I'm going to do, we'll go to the BizFit Minute in a second, but we're going to do the rapid five. Okay. All right. So our rapid five for everybody are just 5 questions that we learn a little bit more about Lisa and his lovely things. What did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, I had that cousin who's a rocket engineer. So engineering is what I thought I wanted to be. And that's what I wanted to be when I went into college. My mother showed me an essay that I wrote where I said I wanted to be a physicist. So I think just that general physics engineering space is where I wanted to end up.
How old were you when you wrote the essay?
I think I was in high school.
That's so cool. I just love that's so cool. I love
that.
That's so great. Okay. I love that. When you say rocket engineer, all I see is space, and I just see all this like amazing possibility. Oh.
Yeah. All of her work has been in the space realm. So,
that's so
satellites
wonderful.
And beyond.
I love it. Okay. What always makes you smile?
These days, when I pause and I breathe and I take a belly breath from my diaphragm, and not just the short breathing from being on the computer, but just going outside and looking at nature and just appreciating nature.
Oh, that's wonderful. And what do you know now as an adult that you wish you knew as a kid?
What do I know now that I wish I knew? I would say that it took me a while um, to embrace failure as a way of learning.
Mm-hmm.
It was somewhere in grad school that I finally. It took me that long
Yeah. Yeah.
to not be a perfectionist, what have you. But failure isn't really failure. It's the F word. It's more like everything's an iteration,
Mm-hmm.
and having a more of a learning mentality. It's not that I wasn't learning. Obviously, I was, but it's sort of my mentality shifted
Right.
somewhere in grad school to everything's an iteration, and if you iterate faster, you get further,
Right.
and be
Right.
willing
Now,
to embrace that iteration faster
yeah, that's
instead of
great.
waiting for things to be perfect, and then you're not going as far.
Yeah, you're right. It's that kind of, what can I learn from this?
What can
How
I
can I
learn from
take
this, and can I learn fast?
fast?
Right? Can I
Mm-hmm.
just not be afraid of it not being perfect? Let me just go and learn and iterate and get further
Yeah.
as a result.
Yeah. Some people never get there. So,
Mm-hmm.
that's awesome. You've got people that are my age and older who still haven't gotten there. So I love that. And then what is your guilty pleasure, Lisa?
Oh, guilty pleasure. What is my guilty pleasure? I should have that at the tip of my tongue. I'm going to say what my guilty pleasure used to be, which was cheesecake. When I first became a vegetarian, I'd have a half a cheesecake for dinner.
Oh my God. Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, why
It's
not?
vegetarian.
Is there a problem with that?
Yes, I'll have to just go ahead and go with that one.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So the next time you're in Los Angeles, if you would
Yes.
like, our family has a secret recipe cheesecake, and I
Oh.
would be happy to make it for you.
Lovely. I'm glad I let you know about my secret pleasure.
Yes. Okay. There we
I'll
go.
take you up on that for
Okay.
sure.
And then our last one, cat or dog. I feel like I know what you're going to say because we heard him, but cat or dog.
Yes. We have a little Australian Yorkshire Terrier that we rescued last year or year before last, and he's a wonderful terrier who's occasionally a terror.
They are, but they're, oh
Yes.
my, what's his name?
His name is Buddy. That's the foster family named him Buddy, and we kept it.
Oh my gosh. I love it. I love that.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
So, how do you avoid founder burnout? So that's the things. And so I already talked about celebrating the small wins. Kind of that's really important. Focusing on your why and connecting with the why of those around you. Having boundaries that are non-negotiable. And I know that for definitely a lot of my entrepreneur journey, I didn't have boundaries, but having those boundaries that are non-negotiable, protecting that time that you need so that you can get the mental energy that you need and be available for all the high stakes decisions that you need to make. I've already talked about the different networks to be a part of, like a peer network. I mentioned Unreasonable Group. I'm a part of Journey to Lead. Was a part of YPO, part of Art of Accomplishment, kind of things that they're doing. Just being a part of these networks of people that can fill you up and support you in various ways. And being an entrepreneur kind of requires you to be optimistic because you're trying to create something that doesn't exist in the world.
Right.
It's just required, but also be realistic with your optimism. Especially when when you're talking to your team, et cetera, but just bringing that realism there, but we can do it. Still having that vision, still having, you see something in the world that doesn't exist and you're trying to create it. So you have to have that vision and you have to believe that it's possible and that you can do it, but bring in some realism as well.
Thank you all for joining us. Lisa, thank you again for joining us. Lisa Dyson, CEO, co-founder of Air Protein. Where you can find her is at airprotein.com. Incredible stuff coming down the pike with her and with John Reid, her partner. And we're very excited. And thank you again for joining us, Lisa.
Thank you.